Well, hey, all you wiretappers out there, glad to be back here in the studio of Gangland Wire. I've got a little bonus episode, I think. I don't know how long it's going to be, but not too long. Steve Popkin, the fan of the podcast, sent me a link to a New York Times article. Actually, it was out of the New York Times archives. They have an archives that you can access. It's dated March 21st, 1976, and the title was five mafia families open rosters to new members. Well, this is back when they opened the books finally. We hear a lot about that. The books were closed, the books were open. They opened the books in 1976. There's a lot of guys who were made right after that. I'm not going to, it's hard to figure out who they all are. It take a lot of time, but you all know who was made in 76, 77 during those years. Would have been right after the books were opened back up. They had to get the commission to approve of that, and there was five families on the commission at the time. I assume Chicago probably was, but since it was a New York deal, they probably just kept it within New York mob bosses to vote on whether they would open up the books again. Now, in this article, I bet when they read this, some of these guys read this article, they were about to shit because here's their business right out on the street. And I know they read those articles. I've got a wiretap where Nick Sabella is reading an article, or actually Tuffy DeLuna is reading an article to him where I believe it was the Wall Street Journal was saying that IUPA was moving out west and moving into Las Vegas. And Nick Sabella says, oh boy. And anyhow, so I know they read this stuff and they pay attention to it, and to see this out on Front Street like this, I don't know. Anyhow, the article said that each family had been given permission to initiate 10 new members, and they were instructed that they had to take these guys from proven money makers within their own family, people that they knew, because they know that they can be infiltrated. So they want to make sure the people that didn't have any legal problems faced them at that time. Now, you're going to get some legal problems eventually. So you just have to, people whose family members, or maybe you're an extended relative of your own, if you're a made guy or you're a boss, you want somebody that's proven their loyalty. Somebody's gone to the joint and kept their mouth shut before. I mean, a guy that goes in, does a tray or 5 years or whatever, somebody does 10 years. I know a guy here in Kansas City, my friend Steve St. John, he did 10 years. Now, he wasn't involved in a mafia crime, but he didn't talk. And he's the kind of guy that, people will look out to hold up to this higher standard, to the higher and high esteem in that world. And he does not commit any more crimes, but be a guy that you would want to commit a crime with. Bright guy, and he didn't talk, and he could have. Believe me, he knew stuff, and he could have talked, and he wouldn't do it. The books were closed in 1957 after Joe Valachi started testifying in '62. He talked about the different, he described the ceremony for the first time, the whole pricking of the finger, burning of the hand, the loyalty oath, which has been reported by other people that have come in. Angelo Leonardo reported it. I found that one. He really did it in detail, and they even taped one in Boston area in the Patriarca family here in the last several years. So they shut down the books. They were so scared of infiltration, and finally, the heads of the five families met and they opened them up, given these kind of certain, restrictions, if you will. Each guy can get 10 people, select, proven money makers and that kind of thing. They still take the oath of silence, and there's no doubt that it was going to be tightly controlled by these mob families. The FBI at the time said, they reported in this article, says they've been holding initiation ceremonies in New York for the past month. And again, my boss reads that. He said, come on, dude, what's up with this? This agent said that these ceremonies have been held in the homes of underbosses and selected family captains, not in the homes of the bosses, because they think they have too much surveillance on them. Apparently, he said, the initiation ceremony they were using at that time was still really close to what Valachi had described: the guns, knives laying there, the oaths of silence, the whole thing. and some of them that were initiated at the time. And I'd be curious, when get a hold of me or comment on the Facebook or on the YouTube, who all was made during this time. This report indicates a guy named John Russo, who was a driver and a bodyguard for Frank Thierry, who was supposedly the boss of the Vito Genovese family at the time. He would have been kind of a new boss. It's another thing. There were some new bosses at the time. I think that's one reason they got this through. Bernardo Magano, he was the guy known as Benny Eggs. I've heard of him. He's a very successful bookmaker and loan shark. Salvatore Franchise, he ran all the gambling operations for Sonny Franchise, who was a captain in the Colombo family. Kind of the article surmised, and probably they got this from an agent, this kind of shows the decline of Carlo Gambino, his lessening of his influence in some of the newer mob, like I said, some of the newer mob bosses were coming in at the time. It also kind of showed the emergence of Carmine Galante. He had come back out of jail, and he'd like assumed he was going to be the boss of the Bonanno family. Just spent 15 years in jail, kept his mouth shut. He felt like he was owed. And he was owed. And of course, we had Rusty Rastelli was inside at the time, and he was supposedly the heir apparent, I believe. But he really led the fight to open the books. Now, if you remember, he was trying to bring in the Zips. He was bringing in these Sicilians to pump up his family and get into narcotics. He knew those guys, first of all, they didn't really speak the language. And if he brought them over, they would be so loyal to him that he could trust them to be loyal to him, and he wanted to be able to make those guys. At the time, they had a pretty new boss, the Lucchese family, Tony Ducks. Anthony Corallo was the new boss. He came from Queens, the Queens faction of that family. Carmine Persico, he was in jail at the time, prison for a period of time during this time, but he had just come through the Colombo Wars and taken over, and he orchestrated the hit on Joey Gallo and finally ended that whole mess there, and everybody got out the mattresses and went back home, I guess. Now, he was in prison. He had appointed his brother Alphonse to run the family. Galante's argument, according to the article, was all the mafia families were declining and the old guys were getting older. That's what happened here in Kansas City when everything went to shit on them after the skim trials, but they were all like 80 years old. All the main guys, except for a couple, were 80 years old. Got to get some new blood in. We got to get some money makers in. We got people get into new rackets. Of course, what he was thinking about was getting into narcotics. Being made is, you guys are all students of this. Most of you know probably more about it than I do. And there's like real deal made guys out there, people who have been, or people in witness protection. I hear from different people that obviously are a lot better, more connected than what you might believe. That would pay attention to a podcast like this. But, they call themselves the Goodfellas, the book title, the Goodfellas, and they have the right. One thing you get as a good fella, you have the right to a sit down. If there's a disagreement, you can have a sit down with another boss, or maybe a boss of another family or some respected consigliere or somebody who would settle this dispute. Now, if a dispute was with a non-member or somebody that's close enough that can get this sit down, he has to be represented by somebody who's made, and he really doesn't have a very good chance of getting the decision in his favor. Made members do not trust people outside the family, and particularly gangsters, probably more than other gangsters than anything. Old Mustache Pete's like Carlo Gambino, not a Mustache Pete. I'm just kidding about that. But the older guys realized that this special relationship was really important. And if you were to induct somebody who was an informant already, it really makes all the families vulnerable, because then they get in on, the whole structure and can testify firsthand, which eventually they got people to do. But at the time they hadn't testify firsthand, as to the structure and who does what. There had been a few initiations during the last 20 years when they were closed, but only when they were absolutely necessary. One of them I mentioned, the Persicos, and the Colombo Wars. So there's all kinds of Colombo Wars. So many people were wounded and in prison and in hiding, and they needed a boss during that time, and they made Alphonse Persico was made just to lead the Colombo family against, in that war, particularly against the Gallo guys, Gallo boys, Joey and was it Kid Albert, Kid Twist, and the whole Gallo family, the Gallo brothers. During this meeting, that newspaper report said that Stefano Magaddino had died, and other ally who was a member of the commission, Joseph Zarelli, was the boss in Detroit, and those two didn't even come. So it turns out, I guess I was wrong when I said at the start that only New York guys are there, but they would have had the biggest stick in that. It was in deference to Gambino that they limited this to 10 people per family. Once they get, 50 new members, or the 5 families get 10 each, then they can maybe kind of ease up for a while, or at least like not make anybody for a while. But if this starts working out, they may want to make some more. Again, Valachi described this: gun and knife are placed on the table in front of him, and then he said in front of him, and that's what Angelo Leonardo told. Said that this represents that you live by the gun and the knife, and you die by the gun and knife. You don't live by the gun, live by the sword, die by the sword. That came from somewhere. Then you got to make a cup of your hand and put the paper in it, set it on fire. Said, this is the way I will burn if I betray any of the secrets of this Cosa Nostra. And then they're assigned a kind of a godfather to, a mentor, a sponsor if you're in recovery. Assign somebody to watch over for you and kind of introduce you in, and it's usually the guy that sponsored your membership in the first place. Now, have you ever heard? I did a story on this from the book Peter Diopoulos, who was Pete the Greek. He was a bodyguard of Joseph Gallo. He was sitting there the night that Gallo got killed, because he and his woman had been out with Joey Gallo and his wife and kid, I think, and celebrating his birthday. He claimed that the Joey Gallo told him that the burning paper custom wasn't anymore. They just said the new member just swears an oath of silence. It won't burn like the Saints card. So I don't know. Pete the Greek said that the godfather, the sponsor, is really important in the new member's life. He said because until the new guy established his own trust and his own relationships, he has to go through his sponsor in all dealings with any family bosses. Peter Greek claims that when a mob member makes his first big score, after the first one after becoming a member, he's got to take it to his sponsor and lay it out, and then let the sponsor divide it up, and then cut him back a little bit. And he said the sponsor would usually cut out a third for the boss and a fifth for himself and give the rest back. The more money a new member brings in, the stronger his position is. I mean, money talks and bullshit walks. He also said in regards to these sit downs I mentioned, a big money maker rarely loses a decision in a sit down. Well, like I said, money talks and bullshit walks. If he's bringing in a lot of money, the boss ain't gonna make him unhappy. He said he gave, for example, Matthew Ainello, Matty the horse, who had all the porn and all that stuff down around 42nd Street, and was a huge money maker. And he said really nobody liked the guy, nobody had any respect for him, but he's strong because he has so much money and he earns so much money. He said money is power in the mafia, just like everywhere else, just like I said. So there's a little story about when they opened up the books, and I'd be curious to hear who was made during that time. It's kind of hard to figure that out, but I got this whole huge big cadre of people out there that, like I said, know more than I do, know so much, especially about the New York families. And in the comments below, maybe we'll make a list of all the people who were made right after the books were opened back up. It seemed like Gaspipe Casso was. I remember reading something about that. But anyhow, so thanks a lot, guys. Don't forget, I like to ride motorcycles. And if you have a problem with PTSD, be sure and go to that VA website and get that hotline. Drugs or alcohol, get hold of Anthony Ruggiano. He's down in Florida, former Gambino guy who's not in witness protection because he's using his own name. Drug and alcohol counselor down there. I see this 1-800-BETS-OFF. If you got a gambling problem, there's that 1-800-BETS-OFF. So that's my, I like to do some public service announcement before I sell something. If you would like to read the inside story about how we got on to the skim from Las Vegas and read the transcripts and listen to some of the audio from that investigation. When I get my book, Leaving Vegas, and get the Kindle version because they have links to the actual audios in that. I'm working on another book. I'm going to start doing some short books, I believe. I'll see how this first one goes of podcast episodes. I just take the transcripts and convert them into more of a story and then go back and rewrite that so it's a little more readable and throw it out there in a Kindle book. It's a little more work than I thought, but I'm getting there. So it's kind of what I'm up to. What are you all up to? Let me know. Join the Gangland Wire podcast Facebook group, or join the subscribe to the podcast, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel and make some comments there and keep coming back and keep coming back. So thanks a lot, guys. So thanks a lot.